Hi guys, so welcome back to our tutorials. In today's tutorial, I'm going to create this tour card you're seeing here on top. So this is mainly can be used by people who have like a tour agency, whereby these are the tour cards. Like for instance, this is a private tour of the Nairobi National Park. And then you see some details, you see some description, the ratings, and the price. So we are going to create these using HTML and CSS. So on my bottom section of the screen, you can see I have a blank HTML template, which is linked to my CSS file, which corresponds to this style.css file, which is empty. And let's start creating the card. So the very first thing is that the font you can see I'm using here is called DM Sans. So head over to fonts.com. And then when you head over there, look for DM Sans, click on it. On the bottom, you'll see a button that says Get Font. Just click it. Make sure you delete all the other fonts you have, but in case you'd like to use them, you can go ahead. Then let's go to the import, and then you copy this import. Then paste it in your CSS. All right. And then the very next thing we need to do here is to add the default CSS style. So that's a margin of 0, padding of 0, and a box sizing of border box. So these are just basic CSS styles. The next thing that you might realize is that we do have icons. You can see this icon here, this icon, and this icon, and the star icon. All these icons are font awesome icons. So you can go to CDN.js and look for the font awesome library. Go to this link, copy that link, paste it in your HTML. That's all. You're set up to use fonts. The next thing is that let's open font awesome. And then we're going to use it later on in the tutorial. So let's go live on this HTML document. I showed you how you can go live in a HTML document by just installing the live server extension and then going live on the bottom. So let's start creating this card. So I'm going to create a div with a class of card here. Inside this div, let's follow along and see what we need to use. So inside this div, we have an image. We have this content. You can see this content is off. This content is off the edges. So that should tell you that this content is inside some div that is common. And then here you can see this image also contains some icons. This wish list icon or save icon, that should tell you that still this image is inside some other container. So you're just going to create an image wrapper here. Inside the image wrapper, we add the image. So if you'd like to use the exact image I'm using, you can always head over to my GitHub repository, TikTok projects, look for a project called Tour V2. View all files, Tour V2. This is Tour V2. Click on it. And here is your thumbnail, right? This is the thumbnail we want to use. So I'm just going to paste it from my other window. So let me show you. I'm just going to paste it here. All right, and that's all. So the image wrapper will just have the image. So the image source is thumb.jpg. The alt can be thumbnail. And then you can see the image is too large, so we can reduce its size by just modifying its width something like 400. And then you can see it there. So the next thing we need to do is to create a div and call it, give it a class of wish list. So what is this wish list? This wish list is this icon. And also you can notice that the icon has something beneath it. So we are going to add it inside the wish list div, and then we paste the heart icon. So we can go to font awesome, then search for heart icon. We want the heart open. This is the heart we want. So just click it and then a model will show up, and then copy and paste that in. So what we have done is, so what you can see the icon here. So what we have done is that inside the image wrapper, okay, we need to add it inside the image wrapper. So there. So what we have done is that inside the image wrapper, we have an image and we have a wishlist div with an heart icon. So this is the wrapper, and then we have the wishlist. This one will be displayed absolute to the image wrapper. And the reason we have a div holding the icon is that you can see now this wishlist is what we can add a background of white and make sure we get this section. So the next thing I said that you can see now that this content has some paddings that shows you that this content is inside its own div. So apart from the image wrapper, let's create a div with a class of content. And then let's just create a heading level 3 and say private tour of the Nairobi National Park. This is the heading inside the content. Then the next thing, we create a div with a class of, maybe let's use location. So we can say dot location. The location has two divs, this left div and the right div. So we can create a div here. Inside the first div, we have a location icon and the text Nairobi. So let's start with the text, the Nairobi. And then here we need to add the location icon. So we just head over back to Font Awesome and look for location. Let's use this one and copy it and paste it. Apart from that, we also have a new div with the clock. So we can go back to Font Awesome and look for a clock. All right, we get the clock. So we create a new div here and then place the clock and then add a text and say 3 to 6 hours. Then the next thing is to, after the location, so we have the heading, the location div, and then the paragraph with the description. So we can add the P. Then let me see whether I can copy and paste that in. After that, then we have another div. We can just call it bottom. So we can say dot bottom. Inside the bottom, we have 3 elements. So the first element, we can just call it rating. So we can say rating. The rating as well, it has 2 elements. So the left star and the text. So we can look for the star. We can look for the star. Copy the star. Paste the star and then create a paragraph. This paragraph will hold this 4.5. So you can see we have some red colors. So we can say span. And then it holds the 4.5. And then after the span, let's hold the quantity. The next thing after the rating, we can create a paragraph with just the bar. And then finally, let's create the price wrapper. So we can create a div with a class of price wrapper. And then it has a paragraph that says from. Make sure you're following along. This is the from. So the from, and after that, let's create the price. And then we can say 5,000 US dollars. And that's it for the HTML. You can see how our HTML document looks like. So let's jump into the CSS and let's start making the magic. So the very first thing we might do in the CSS is to place this card in the middle and give it some width. So we can start with the card itself and give it a width of 400 pixels. We give it some fixed width, and then let's make sure it's in the middle. So we can grab the body, we display it flex, justify content center. All right, the next thing you might realize is that this content is too close to the edges. Let's give the body some padding. Right, that looks nice. So the next thing is to specify the font family. So you can say font family. So you can go here on top and see that we have DM Sans. So you can just come say and DM Sans. Then as a fallback, sans serif. Then you can see the font has changed. Right. So the next thing I want to create is a CSS variable. So I'm just going to create a text color of hash 12555555. This will be our text color. And then I'll grab all the paragraphs and give it that variable color and say text color. And then let's reduce its font weight to 300. So that's nice. The next thing is let's work on this wish list. So we give it a class of wish list. So let's go to the image wrapper. We give it a class of wish list. Let's add some dot wish list. We can position it absolute. And then top of 0. Now let's do 5%. Then left of, no, let's use right of 5% as well. Okay. And then after doing that, let's grab the parent, which is the image wrapper, the parent of the wish list. It's called the image wrapper. This is the parent. Let's give it a position of relative. So we can say that image wrapper. And then let's give it a position of relative. Now I don't know whether you can see this icon. It is here on top. So let's give this a background color of white. You can see it there. Let's add some paddings to it. So we can do a padding of something like 5 pixels. Okay, you can see it looks a bit nice. Let's give it a border radius of 50%. Okay, you can see it. But now it's not in the middle. We can use a flexbox trick whereby we can just display it. Display flex. Justify content to the center. And align items to the center. So we can use that trick to make sure we get a very, but still the sizes does not match. So we can come here and add a width of 1.9 rem. And to make sure the width and the height match, we can add an aspect ratio. So we can say aspect ratio 1:1. And then now you can see the icon is in the middle of that circular ball, because the aspect ratio basically says let the height become similar to the width. The next thing we might want to tackle is the content. The content in the finished version has some padding, so we can just grab the content and then so we can grab the content and then say padding on rem. Okay, that looks nice. But now you can see the padding top is too large. And before you forget, let's go back to the card and add some box shadows. So I'm going to go to a box shadow generator website. It's called getcss.com/css-box-shadow-examples. And then let's look for a box shadow that we might like. I like this box shadow. So we just copy it and then paste it to our card. And then we save. All right. And then if we go back, you can see the box shadow looks very, very nice. Let's add some border radius to the card. So we can come here and say border radius. And then we can do something like 10 pixels. So something else we might realize is that the image still overflows and does not respect the border radius. So we can come here and say overflow hidden. So prevent everything from overflowing. And then now you can see the image respects the box shadows as expected. The next thing is that you can see this padding is too large. Even if we added a 1 rem padding on all elements, we also need to minimize this padding. But before we do that, let's go to the image wrapper and give it a height, so that even if you have like 10 cards, they will still be of the same height. So you can do 15 rem. All right, and then you can also do maybe 12, 13. Something else we might want to do now is to grab the image itself. So we can just say here at image wrapper, and then the image, we give it a width of 100%, height of 100%, and an object fit of cover. All right, you can see it looks nice. So I don't think the padding top on the content. So let's the padding top be something like 0.5 rem, right 1 rem, left, so right bottom 1 rem, and left 1 rem to minimize this padding. So the next thing we need now is to make sure that we can go back to the card and display it flex. We want to add some space between them. I don't think we need that. Let's focus on something else. So the next thing we need to work on is the heading itself. All right. So, but I think the heading is already nice. So what I'm going to work on now is these icons. So we give it a location. We need to display them flex dot location display flex. You can see the two locations are displayed flex. And then if we go back to the content, let's display it flex so that we can add some paddings. Flex direction of column, and then a gap of 0.7 rem. You can see now there's a gap between all these elements. So when we do the location, let's add line items to the center, gap of maybe 10% of the width. All right, you can see them there. The next thing is to make sure that this icon and the text are displayed side by side. So we say that the location, this is the location, it has two elements, this left hand and the right hand. So currently what we are working on is the location div, but we want to focus now on the location and then the div, and then we can display it flex. So we can just do dot location, direct child div, then display flex here, align items to the center, and then a gap of 0.1 rem. All right, you can see them side by side. So that's fantastic. So let's continue. The next thing is that you want to make these icons. You want to change the color of the icons. So how we can do this is that we can call the location, and then we grab all the icons and then give them a color of the text color like that. And then you can see the colors are changed. We are done with that section. The next section is the paragraph. I think the paragraph is okay. So let's not focus on the paragraph. The next section is this bottom section. So we are just going to grab the bottom section. How did I get the bottom section? We have a class on the bottom section. It has 3 elements. We need to display them flex. So we can do display flex and a gap of 10% as well. Then you can see they are displayed side by side. The next thing is that on the bottom, we need to grab the direct child div. So when we do the direct child, that means it has to be a direct child. So if the div is inside this, let's assume we have another div here. If we do dot bottom and then we grab the direct child, this one won't be grabbed because it's not a direct child. So how we do it is that we grab the direct child div and display them flex. So what we can do now, also we can align the center. I can align items to the center, and these are aligned. So how I say that is that I think we could do that, or can grab individual elements because we gave them classes. So we can say rating display flex. So this is our rating, and then let's go to the price wrapper. Display flex as well. Let's add some gaps. So we can add a gap of 0.2 rem, then a gap here of 0.2 rem. All right. We also need to align items to the center. The reason I'm doing that is this icon star. So this star icon. So this star icon is not. This star icon is not in the middle. I hope you can see that. This is not in the middle with the text, so we can just do align item center, and also here center. Now they are aligned. Let's grab this and give it a color of red. So we go back and say dot rating, and then we grab the icon. This is the rating. This whole thing is the rating. Then we grab the icon and say color of red. All right. And that's, you can see the color has changed. And also we need the paragraph on the rating. So instead of just the rating, we can also add the rating paragraph. And then so the rating and the paragraph, and then we grab the span. So we can do the rating, the paragraph, and the span. All right, so you can see the 4.5 is the one that is highlighted. And finally, let's grab the pricing. We give it a class of price. So the price, we can do a font weight of 600, and then font size of 1.1 rem. We're working on this, and then I think that looks nice. And that's it, guys. That's how we can add such a card. The final thing I want to add is to increase the height of the image wrapper to something like 15 rem. And that's the final look. So that's how we can create such a card. It's essentially very simple. We just need to put together some of the things we have learned, and that's it. Thank you for watching, and make sure you like, follow, and share with your friends. Thank you.